Hello, friends, and welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. Considering that the medical industry has very tight rules and regulations, this woman was ignorant AF to assume OP was just being lazy, especially when it clearly wasn't life-threatening, but she was just being impatient. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Not my patient. Some years ago, when I recently got hired in my current hospital and was assigned to the ER, I am a GP, general practitioner, I had an encounter with a woman who refused to understand that not any person with a scrub and a white coat can treat a patient. To give you an idea of the setting, the ER observation unit was a giant square room with around 20 beds in total, separated by curtains. In the middle was the main counter where me and another doctor had our computers alongside the whole nursery team. GPs like me were in charge of patients that have not been hospitalized or being treated by another service. Nevertheless, because our unit had the most amount of beds, it was not uncommon that some patients who were not our responsibility were assigned one till they could go to the correct unit. It was 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Me and my coworker had just ended our round and were updating the medical records when a woman, let's call her Louisa, came to the counter. L. Excuse me, you didn't check my dad, and we've been here for 2 hours. Me. I'm sorry, what's the bed number, please? L. 109? Me. Let me see in the system. Oh, I get it. Sorry, ma'am, but it says here your father's being treated by the internal medicine group. I'll call them to see when they're coming. L. Thanks. I asked one of the nurses if she can call the internist to tell them they have a pending evaluation in our unit and then continue with my work. 20 minutes later, Louisa comes again asking if I could see her dad. Me. Is there something wrong? If a patient in my unit decompensated, I could treat him even if I was not his assigned doctor. L. No, he's fine, but no one's come to see him. Me. I'll try again. This time, I personally call the IM office and tell an internist about the patient in room 109. He says he'll be there after finishing floor duty. To make the story short, for the next 4 hours, I have Louisa coming over and over and over and over every 20 minutes to see if I could attend her dad. I repeatedly told her no and tried to contact his doctor multiple times by calling, sending a nurse, and even going to the IM office myself, only to be rebuffed because they were busy. I think both Louisa and I were in our last nerves when the final clash occurred. 12 o'clock and it's lunchtime for me, so I got up from the counter and was midway to the exit door when Louisa jumped in front of me. Like a literal jump. It was quite hilarious in retrospective. L. Where are you going? Me. Lunch? L. You can't go. No one has seen my dad. Me. Ma'am, I already told you a dozen times that he's not my patient. I've tried multiple times to get his doctor here, but he won't come. I can't do anything else. L. Then why the F are you here if you can't do crap for someone sick? He's going to die because you're just lazy. Me. That's not what's happening. I don't even know what your dad has. I knew the main diagnosis, but not all that could be attached. L. See? You're useless. That's why health is so screwed. Useless doctors like you stealing our money and doing nothing. Me. Listen, woman, you don't have to be... L. Do something or I will sue you. Me. Fine, but shut up for God's sakes. This may not sound serious, but by treating a patient's family like that, I could have been in a very, very big problem. We're taught to be tolerant to the maximum point, and even then, exploding like that's not good. Also, keep in mind that all the shouting had attracted a lot of attention, and at least 10 or more people saw the scene. That'd be a fun talk to HR. Louisa was as shocked as I was, but I decided to take the opportunity to tell her to follow me, and she complied with no more shouting. I guided her to the IM office and literally shoved her inside, telling her they were the guys she needed to talk to. According to the grapevine, the nurses, it was like if I had thrown a hungry coyote into the henhouse. Total chaos. After eating something and calming myself down, I came back to my workplace, and surprisingly enough, Louisa was there waiting for me so she could apologize. We both understood the situation has been very stressful for the both of us and got out of our hands. No complaints were made, and luckily no one else reported me, so my indiscretion was luckily forgotten before it went higher up. Her father was moved to the IM floor, so after that, I never saw her again. So you could say this was the happy ending of this long story. Yes, people are panicking, and a certain amount of rudeness most people will forgive because of that, but many people go way too far and treat medical staff horribly. And our second story. Marine gets punished, gets 2 weeks off all duties. 20 years ago, I was in the Marine Corps. While going through schooling for my MOS, basically job training, I was between schools. As such, the command at the school didn't know what to do with me for nearly 3 months. One day, during this period, a complete a-hole of a staff NCO, we'll call him Staff Sergeant Smalls, noticed that I was just sitting around doing nothing, which is what most people in my situation end up doing during periods like this. Naturally, Staff Sergeant Smalls was not pleased with this, and he came up with a plan. Use me to do all the crap work cleaning on the base. Staff Sergeant Smalls. Marine? Me. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Smalls. Why aren't you doing any work? Me. I'm waiting between schools at the moment, Staff Sergeant. There's nothing for me to be doing. Staff Sergeant Smalls. That's no excuse. A Marine should always look busy. I want you to go outside and clean the plaques on the barracks until they shine. You're to do nothing else until you're finished, understand? Me, sighing inwardly. Yes, Staff Sergeant. I then proceed to get the cleaning equipment, brasso and a rag, grab a chair and begin to get to work. I find it to be very nice outside, a cool breeze stationed near the coast, and people very rarely come out here other than for formation. The plaques are located between 2 barracks and generally out of sight. Suddenly I remember the Staff Sergeant's exact words, until they shine and do nothing else until you're finished. Cue plan for malicious compliance. Having finished polishing one of the plaques, I decided to take a break and go find my sergeant. She'd been in the room when Staff Sergeant Smalls gave the order. I confirmed with her what Staff Sergeant's order was and just what I would be able to avoid doing due to his order. She looked at me confused for a moment and asked me to clarify. I did so, included my plan and my situation. She laughed and said, as long as you're present for formation and only do that task while on working hours, she'll back me up. I dropped off the cleaning equipment I'd been using and instead grabbed some needles and toothpicks. I then proceeded outside and got to work, painstakingly picking clean every speck of oxidization, rust from the plaques. 15 minutes go by, an hour, 2 hours. Staff Sergeant Smalls comes out, my sergeant in tow, along with the Master Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Smalls. Marine, I ordered you to report. He pauses for a second, seeing me at work, still on the first of the 5 plaques. What the hell are you doing? Me. I'm cleaning the plaques as you ordered, Staff Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Smalls. With toothpicks, he stammers. Me. Yes, Staff Sergeant. Staff Sergeant Smalls sighs, apparently thinking I'd misunderstood his order as I was still a lowly private. I'll get you the brasso. He turns to leave. Me, looking at my sergeant for confirmation. Staff Sergeant, the brasso won't clean these to your specification, and as per your orders, I'm allowed to do nothing else until these plaques shine. The Master Sergeant raises an eyebrow, looking confused. I learned later the Master Sergeant was pulled out here as Staff Sergeant Smalls was going to claim I was being lazy and disobeying orders, and was there to NJP me, non-judicial punishment. He looks to the Sergeant, who confirms exactly what the Staff Sergeant's orders were, word for word. Master Sergeant then approaches and requests that I stand aside. He examines my work so far. At this point, I should note, these plaques were old, about 8 inches by 2 feet each, and made of copper. For those who don't know, copper oxidizes fairly quickly when exposed to sea air, as mentioned before we were on the coast, which gave the plaques a mucky green color. The about 7% I'd gotten done in those 2 hours, a stark copper orange that was actively reflecting the light. Master Sergeant nodded to me, turned to the Staff Sergeant and said, "He's following your orders, to the letter I might add. Nobody's to interfere with his cleaning until he's done." Staff Sergeant Smalls looks flabbergasted, tries to claim that I'm needed elsewhere, probably wants me for some other crappy job, but the Master Sergeant shuts him down. This is now an order from him, basically meaning nobody other than an officer can now pull me away from this duty without conferring with him first. End result, 2 weeks of calm, if painstaking, work outside, nobody to interrupt me, and the occasional view of Staff Sergeant Smalls glaring at me as he walks by. There were a few people who stopped by in the early days questioning what I was doing. They accepted that I was just following orders, my response to any such questions given, and if they needed me for something, to talk to Master Sergeant first. Oh, the plaques? They were picked clean. Not a speck of oxidization remained. 2 days after I finished, there was an inspection by the base commander. He was amazed at how clean the plaques were, that he could actually see his reflection in them. Our barracks was commended on our attention to detail and cleanliness. While I didn't get a commendation by name, this was more than enough for me, as I could see Staff Sergeant Smalls fuming while the base commander spoke. The next day, I shipped out to my next school. Best 2-week detail I ever had. And our last story. Fake HOA wants to steal our house from us. My parents are staying in my home while I live out of the country. We've been gone since 2018. My father informed me that 2 weeks ago, a man who looks like he's for real showed up looking for my husband to deliver a summons. He didn't leave a card or any way to contact him. Friday, someone showed up and asked my parents when they were moving out because the house was being foreclosed. All of our bills are up to date. Taxes, HOA, and house payments have never been late. All of our mail had been forwarded. We looked online, and our lot number is on record through the county auditor's site for having a lien since 2016. We lived there at the time. This was for a company that we didn't recognize. We never got any information that we owed anyone. Wouldn't something like this show up in the mail? We never received anything. Wouldn't it be in our credit reports? We watch those very closely. I don't even know where to start. I'm waiting for the world to wake up in Seattle since I'm still in another frickin' country and I won't be back for a visit until June. Update. My home is not being foreclosed. Details. We purchased our home in 2012 as literally the first people in the neighborhood. We've done quite a bit of moving around but kept this house as our forever home. I called our HOA and they verified that we were up to date. Then she asked us if we were good with our sub-HOA. What sub-HOA? Apparently, there's been a second HOA that quite a few of us had no idea even existed. The management company was replaced last year when they were found to be misusing funds. That's when letters started going out to quite a few people in the neighborhood. I got in touch with the secondary HOA who directed us to a lawyer. They're telling us that we're good as long as we pay the past due fees. The main thing I'm trying to figure out now with our own lawyer is if they can even do that. I've read through our contract, and there was no secondary HOA when we purchased our home. It didn't come into existence until 9 years ago. So how are they claiming we owe them money when, again, we didn't know they existed? Either way, it's been fixed, and it's being handled by our own attorney there in Washington. As for the foreclosure, that's another story. I got a hold of the county foreclosure department, and they told me there are people who search the site for list pendants as possible foreclosure sales. So basically, a creeper who was trying to scare my parents out of the house. Jerks. Now the question remains, can a secondary HOA just pop up out of nowhere demanding fees when it wasn't even on the scene when our homeowners bought the place? Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.